prologue, Ethan Hayes was the human equivalent of wallpaper. A pleasantly bland pattern in the background of the corporate machine, his most notable skill was the art of strategic invisibility. As a low-level grunt in the Solstice Group marketing department, his life was a carefully curated performance of quiet diligence, designed to convey just enough competence to avoid being fired and just enough anonymity to avoid any actual responsibility. His sole rebellion, his secret sanctuary, was his mind. During mandatory, soul-crushing meetings, while his body was present, his inner world was a sprawling, multi-season dramatic comedy. And its favorite subject for a roast was his CEO, Catherine Pierce. Catherine Pierce was a legend carved from ice. At 27, she was the formidable founder and CEO of the Solstice Group, a woman whose business acumen was matched only by her seemingly total lack of human warmth. She was cold, calculating, and moved through the corporate world with a razor-sharp precision that left everyone, from interns to the star of his internal stand-up specials. Then, on a perfectly ordinary Monday, the unthinkable happened. During a quarterly review, as Ethan was mentally composing a particularly vivid comparison between Catherine's leadership style and a polar vortex, he saw her freeze. Her sentence cut off. Her sharp, intelligent eyes, which usually saw through corporate BS with laser focus, now held a flicker of something else. Pure, unadulterated confusion. And in that moment, Catherine Pierce heard him. Not his voice, but his thoughts. Every snarky comment, every ridiculous observation about the terrible coffee, every silent plea for the sweet release of the meeting's end, it all played in her head, crystal clear. For a woman whose composure was her armor, this was an unacceptable, mind-shattering breach. It made her unravel. She spilled her coffee, a catastrophic loss of control that sent a ripple of shock through the entire executive team. But amidst the chaotic, sarcastic static of Ethan's mind, Catherine discovered something else, something far more valuable than her shattered peace. She discovered that while Ethan Hayes was a professional slacker on the surface, his inner monologue was a gold mine of uncanny, almost prophetic business insights. He could effortlessly spot multi-million-dollar traps, see through polished lies, and identify risks no one else, not her most expensive consultants, not her most seasoned directors, could see. He was a human lie detector, a corporate oracle hiding in plain sight. So, Catherine Pierce, a woman who valued logic above all else, did the only logical thing. She promoted the nobody from the back of the room to be her new special assistant. Suddenly, Ethan's cushy, anonymous life was over, replaced by a six-figure salary, a bewildering new title, and a front-row seat to the Ice Queen's world. And Catherine's silent, ordered existence was hijacked by a constant, internal broadcast of sarcasm, pastry reviews, and genius. The story of the slacker and the CEO, of chaos and control, had begun. One silent, brilliant, infuriating roast at a time. Chapter 1. The unwitting oracle. The air in the Solstice Group boardroom was so crisp and chilled it could have been bottled and sold as aspirational ambience. 42 floors above the bustling Seattle streets, the world was reduced to silent, moving dioramas behind massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, the only sound was the voice of Catherine Pierce, a sound described by Forbes as able to flay a Fortune 500 CEO at 50 paces. Catherine, the 27-year-old prodigy who had built Solstice from a tech startup into a global innovation titan, sat at the head of the 20-foot-long obsidian table. The sharp lines of her custom-tailored white blazer were a stark contrast to the soft, anxious slump of Mark, the product manager, standing before her. Her Patek Philippe watch, a legacy from her father, ticked away the final seconds of the man's career with metronomic precision. "Your Q3 projections are not just optimistic, Mark," she stated, her voice devoid of any emotion warmer than glacial melt. "They're built on sand. The market shift you failed to account for makes this entire proposal not just obsolete, but an active liability." A collective, silent wince went through the dozen other executives present. This was Catherine's theater, and today's play was a tragedy titled The Public Demolition of Mark. Tucked away in the most inconspicuous corner of the room, Ethan Hayes, a low-level marketing grunt whose official purpose was to be part of the scenery, added a tiny, elaborate crown to a stick figure in his notebook. On the surface, he was the picture of a quiet, diligent employee. Internally, he was the star of his own sprawling, multi-season dramatic comedy. Ethan, meanwhile, thinking. And the execution is complete. No trial, no appeals. The Ice Queen's court is in session. Cue the dramatic music. Seriously, does her heart pump antifreeze? That scowl could freeze lava. I bet her idea of a spa day is a liquid nitrogen bath and a deep tissue audit. What man could possibly handle that? Her ideal boyfriend is probably a storefront mannequin, emotionally stable, always well-dressed, and blissfully immune to frostbite. Catherine froze mid-sentence. The word liability hung in the air, unfinished. A sudden, piercing headache, sharp and localized behind her eyes, struck her. And with it came a voice. It wasn't an auditory hallucination. It was clearer, more immediate, as if someone had tuned a radio directly inside her skull. It was a lazy, sarcastic drawl she'd never heard aloud, but somehow instinctively knew. Ethan's mental roast going on full blast mode. And there it is, the classic Catherine Pierce trilogy: invalidate, denigrate, obliterate. A masterclass in corporate evisceration. Poor Mark. She shot down his proposal 8 times last quarter. At this point, he should just save time and submit his resignation printed on a white flag. Hang in there, Mark, my man. Only 45 more minutes of existential dread to go. Catherine's knuckles, resting on the polished obsidian, were white. Her legendary composure, a fortress that had never been breached, shuddered under this psychic assault. She subtly scanned the room, her gaze, usually capable of pinning a person to their seat, now darting, searching. Every face was a mask of rigid fear and rapt attention, except one. In the far corner, partially obscured by a large potted fiddle leaf fig, was a young man she vaguely recognized from the marketing department. Ethan Hayes. His head was bent over a notebook, his shoulders shaking with a slight, rhythmic tremor that suggested suppressed laughter. The voice at her head was perfectly in sync with those shakes. A terrifying, impossible idea began to form in the fortress of her logic. It was a hypothesis so absurd it felt like a crack in reality itself. Mark, sensing a pause, foolishly tried to defend himself. With all due respect, Ms. Pierce, our data from the National Market Consensus Study clearly indicates, Ethan, thinking while shaking his head slowly, oh, Mark. No, don't cite the National Market Consensus Study. That's the corporate equivalent of bringing a water pistol to a thermonuclear war. That data is so old it's practically fossilized. The new report landed yesterday, and it shows that demographic density has cratered since NVIDIA moved their campus. He's not just wrong, he's archaeologically incorrect. He's trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of quicksand and wishful thinking. Catherine's eyes snapped back to Mark, the new information from the voice in her head giving her an almost supernatural advantage. National Market Consensus Study, she interrupted, her voice like a shard of ice, is from last quarter. The new data, which I assume you have not yet reviewed, shows a 30% drop in viable consumer base. You're building a strategy on a foundation that no longer exists. Mark's face went ashen. The other executives stared, bewildered at her omniscience. Ethan's internal assessment of the Mark situation. Boom. Headshot. She knew. How the hell did she know? Does she have a secret spy in the data analytics department that even data analytics doesn't know about? Or is she just so terrifyingly smart she can smell obsolete data from a mile away? Note to self, never try to bluff the human supercomputer. Maintaining her mask of icy calm, Catherine reached for her porcelain coffee cup, her movements deliberately slow. She brought it to her lips and took a sip of the dark, bitter brew. Ethan thinking, his mental voice was tinged with awe and dark glee. Whoa. She drank it. She actually drank the sludge. This stuff tastes like burnt dirt mixed with corporate regret and a hint of facilities department despair. What a badass. She's so committed to the stoic, unbothered CEO bit that she's willing to chemically scar her own taste buds. I'm not even mad. That's a level of dedication to the brand that I can only aspire to. I need a written warning just to look at that coffee. That was the final straw. The combination of the vile coffee and the sheer, unadulterated audacity of the thought broke her. Catherine Pierce, who had faced down hostile takeovers and media firestorms without blinking, choked. The coffee she had just sipped sprayed from her mouth in an undignified mist. The boardroom fell into a deathly silence, broken only by the faint hum of the HVAC system. It was a silence so profound you could hear the sound of a dozen careers simultaneously pausing. They had just witnessed the impossible. The unflappable Catherine Pierce had flapped. She calmly, deliberately, dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin. Her stunning face was a placid, frozen sea, but the tips of her ears were a telltale, burning crimson. Her mind was weathering a Category 5 hurricane, but her eyes were already sharpening, locking onto their target. She let the silence stretch, amplifying the discomfort to a nearly unbearable degree. Catherine called out loud, "Ethan Hayes." The name cut through the quiet like a gunshot. Every head swiveled to the corner. Ethan jolted as if electrocuted, his pen skidding across the page. He looked up, his expression one of pure, unadulterated bewilderment. Ethan's internal panic alarm was now blaring. Holy crap. She knows my name? Why does she know my name? Why is she calling my name? Did she see the doodles? No way, the angle's all wrong. Is it because I used the color printer for my fantasy football league chart? Oh man, there goes my bonus. It was nice knowing you, sweet, sweet Cash. Hello, unemployment line. Catherine, starting tomorrow, report to the 42nd floor. You're my new special assistant. The silence that followed was somehow even deeper, a vacuum of sound. Jaws were genuinely slack. Ethan was dumbfounded, his brain short-circuiting. He looked like a man who had just been told he'd won the lottery, but had to accept the prize in a den of lions. Ethan thinking, his thoughts colored with bewildering tone. Special assistant? Me? Ethan Hayes? The guy whose 5-year plan involves the company gracefully going under so I can cash out my 401 and open a food truck? This woman has finally cracked. The pressure has shattered that icy exterior and broken the genius within. There is no other logical explanation, unless a ridiculous, pink, bubbly thought pushed its way through the panic. Ethan reached onto a conclusion that he didn't dare to believe. Unless she's into me? Catherine's office, later. Alone in her stark, minimalist sanctuary, Catherine stood before the wall of glass. The glittering skyline of Seattle splayed out before her. But she wasn't seeing the view. She was replaying the meeting, moment by horrifying moment. After dismissing the hapless Mark, the next presenter had been Susan Miller, the director of marketing. A polished, formidable woman. Susan's proposal for a new lifestyle product line was, by all accounts, perfect. The data was solid, the market analysis impeccable, the financial projections robust. All the other executives had been nodding in approval. Catherine herself had felt the familiar, satisfying click in her mind, the one that preceded her giving a project the green light. Her pen had been poised to sign, and then his voice had flooded her mind again. Ethan's voice rang in her mind, clear as day. Wow, this proposal looks good on paper. Shame paper itself is flammable. This is a total landmine. The Westlake Urban Core Consumer Report she's citing as her market foundation is from last quarter. The new one just came out yesterday, and since revoked the investments, the demographic potential has dropped by a solid 30%. She's using old data to sell a fantasy and cleverly shift the risk of this new product line onto the company. And their proposed manufacturing partner, Apex Holdings? Sounds impressive, but their founder's idiot son has been bleeding the company dry for years to fund his crypto bro escapades. It's just an empty shell propped up by creative accounting and terrified bank managers. Partnering with them would be like paying a burglar to redecorate your house. This woman isn't just ambitious. She's a shark, and she's trying to feed us chum. Stunned, Catherine had done the only thing she could. She'd paused the meeting, claiming a sudden migraine, another first, and ordered her unflappable secretary, Sarah, to immediately and discreetly verify those two very specific points. 5 agonizing minutes later, Sarah had returned, her face pale. The results were in. Ethan Hayes was right. Word for word. The Westlake report was obsolete. Apex Holdings was a house of cards. If she hadn't heard his thoughts, Solstice Group would have walked straight into a multi-million-dollar disaster, one that would have cost jobs, evaporated investor confidence, and been a permanent stain on her record. She turned from the window, her reflection a ghost in the glass. Ethan Hayes, 20-something, mediocre performance reviews, noted for a lack of corporate initiative. His personnel file was the biography of a professional nobody. And yet, this seemingly ordinary, professionally lazy employee possessed an uncanny, almost supernatural business insight. It wasn't just educated guessing. It was a near-prophetic level of pattern recognition, an ability to see the hidden threads connecting data points, personal motives, and market forces. It was a superpower disguised as sarcasm. The how was a question that threatened to unravel her understanding of physics and sanity. But the what now was suddenly very clear. This was not a problem to be solved. It was an asset to be secured. Ethan Hayes, the human polygraph, the living, breathing corporate oracle, was now the most valuable person in the company. And she had just promoted him to be her shadow. She picked up her phone, her decision absolute. Catherine, Sarah, draft the transfer and new contract for Ethan Hayes. Title, Special Assistant to the CEO. Salary, set it at $150,000. She hung up, the click of the receiver echoing in the silent room. A storm of chaotic, sarcastic, brilliant thoughts was coming for her ordered world. And for the first time in a very long time, Catherine Pierce felt something akin to anticipation. Ethan stumbled back to his cubicle in a daze, the weight of a dozen bewildered and envious stares following him. He collapsed into his cheap office chair, which let out a familiar, wheezing sigh. The stick-figure-riddled notebook felt like a relic from a past life. Special assistant to the CEO. The words echoed in his head, nonsensical and terrifying. He was just Ethan Hayes, master of minimal effort and champion of the 3-martini lunch. He wasn't special anything. His phone, face down on the desk, buzzed with a familiar, dread-inducing tone. It was the Workday notification sound. With a sense of impending doom, he flipped it over. Workday alert. Your job profile has been updated. He tapped the notification, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Workday profile view. Employee, Hayes Ethan. New title, Special Assistant to the CEO. Department, Office of the CEO. Effective date, tomorrow. New base compensation, $150,000. Ethan stared. He blinked. He stared again. The numbers on the screen refused to change. Ethan's face was frozen with incredulity and his mind unable to comprehend the situation. $150,000? Per year? That can't be right. That's a typo. Someone added an extra zero. That's more than double what I make now. That's I can actually pay off my student loans before I die money. I can afford an apartment that doesn't have suspicious mushroom growth in the shower money. Holy crap. It's real. She's serious. This isn't a dream. It's a financial hallucination. He swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. The sheer, life-altering magnitude of that number was a physical blow. All his plans of quiet sabotage and graceful failure evaporated in the face of a salary that could actually fund a decent life. His moment of stunned reverie was shattered by a nudge from his deskmate, Leo, a round-faced guy whose grin was permanently set to mischievous. Leo asked mischievously, "Dude, what the hell? Did you win a lottery? Or did you secretly bribe the big boss?" Ethan's eyes still glazed over replied, "I'd love to bribe her, but I don't even know what zip code she lives in." Leo, "Then it must be your rugged good looks that melted the Ice Queen's heart. You're the office himbo Hayes, our champion." Ethan, waving a weak hand, "Get real. With my track record, I'm lucky she hasn't fired me." He said it out loud, but his mind was a frantic mess. Ethan thought, "This is wrong. This is all kinds of wrong. I'm just a regular guy. No trust fund, no connections. My performance is aggressively average. Why would she promote me? Special assistant. That's the kind of job where you're with her 24/7, going to fancy dinners, handling top secret files. The salary. Holy crap. $150,000. This isn't a golden opportunity. It's a trap. Something this weird has to have a catch. What does she want from me? My looks? No way. The line of guys trying to date her would stretch from Seattle to San Francisco. My talent, please. My only real talent is finding new ways to slack off. Unless the same terrifying, thrilling thought replayed in his mind. Ethan's inner drama queen took the center stage, his mind trying to rationalize the sudden changes. She's not actually trying to make a move on me, is she? Oh God. The powerful CEO falls for the quirky office nobody. That's the cheesiest Hallmark movie plot ever. But if it was Catherine Pierce, it wouldn't be the worst thing. She looks like a supermodel. Amazing body. A little cold maybe, but with the lights off, who cares? He shook his head, trying to dislodge the absurd fantasy. Just then, his phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Reddit. He was a loyal lurker on the unofficial company subreddit, our Solstice Group Confidential. He tapped the icon, and his blood ran cold. Reddit, Solstice Group Confidential. Posted by user, Anonymous Dog, breaking. Ice Queen meltdown and mystery promotion. Did anyone else just witness Catherine Pierce literally spit take her coffee during the Q3 review? I've never seen her flinch, let alone malfunction. And then she promotes some random guy from marketing to be her special assistant? The guy who sits in the back and draws? The plot thickens faster than the coffee in the third-floor break room. User, Gossip Giraffe, for real? Who is he? Is he hot? User, Anonymous Dog, it's that guy, Ethan Hayes. And yeah, he's pretty cute, but he's usually so quiet you forget he exists. Like human wallpaper. User, Cubicle Wizard, his proposal last month got shot down for being too zen. How did he just leapfrog everyone? Does he have some kind of secret connection? User, Gossip Giraffe, connection? I doubt it. I heard the way Catherine was looking at him was intense. Like, I will either promote you or have you disappeared intense. User, Throwaway Tissue, can confirm the promotion is real. HR just pushed through a comp change for EH to $150,000. I have whiplash. User, Gossip Giraffe, 150. For an assistant. Spill, user, Anonymous Arver. We need details. Is he a secret genius? A long-lost heir? Her secret boy toy. User, Anonymous Dog, the only thing I know for sure is that the flames of gossip in this company burn brighter than our stock performance. Stay tuned, folks. Ethan numbly locked his phone, feeling the heat of 100 invisible eyes. He was no longer just Ethan Hayes, low-level grunt. He was a corporate mystery, a walking, talking rumor mill. He felt like a new exhibit at the zoo, the kind of monkey that had just learned a weird new trick and was now getting paid a fortune for it. In her office on the 42nd floor, Catherine took a slow sip of water, the cool liquid doing little to soothe the strange new reality she found herself in. She had just hired herself a human podcast of chaos, genius, and absurdity. And as the anonymous comments on Reddit proved, the rest of the company was just as confused as she was. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft, expensive sigh, sealing Ethan and Catherine in a mirrored, soundproof cube. The air immediately thickened, saturated with the scent of her subtle, alpine perfume and his sheer, internal panic. It was the first time they had been truly alone since his promotion. Ethan thinking, okay, don't make eye contact. Look at the floor numbers. Look at your reflection. Wow, my hair is a mess. Did I even brush it this morning? Why is it so quiet? Should I say something? Nice weather we're having for a corporate takeover. No. Shut up, Ethan. Just breathe. Try not to faint in front of your new boss who pays you an obscene amount of money for reasons unknown. Catherine stood perfectly still, her gaze fixed on the descending numbers, looking for all the world like a statue of a goddess contemplating the mortals below. She said nothing, simply listening to the frantic, high-energy hum of his thoughts. The elevator pinged, stopping on the 30th floor. The doors opened to reveal Sarah, Catherine's impeccably dressed secretary, holding a thick, embossed folder. "Ms. Pierce, the final due diligence report on the Starfire Inc. acquisition," Sarah said, handing the file to Catherine before stepping back with a polite, professional nod. The doors closed again. Catherine didn't open the file. She simply held it, a silent prop. It was all the invitation Ethan's brain needed. Ethan Mind Auto started his snarky routine. Oh, the Starfire deal. The brilliant move to buy a sinking ship because it has a fancy name. Let's see. We just acquired a media company with the strategic foresight of a stunned possum. Their star roster. Where to even begin? His mental voice shifted, losing its panicked edge and taking on a methodical, almost clinical tone that was starkly at odds with his slouching posture. Ethan thinking, shifting his mental gears to an assessment mode. First, the so-called A-listers. Jessica Sterling. Name recognition is a 9. Bankability is a 2. Her last 3 films tanked harder than the Titanic. The public is tired of her playing the same emotionally constipated heroine. We need to pivot her to a gritty indie drama, maybe a limited series, to rebuild credibility. Cost-to-value ratio, currently a drain. Then there's Chase Rider. Pretty face, can't act his way out of a paper bag. His Instagram has more engagement than his movies. Solution: leverage the social media. Ditch the action hero roles. Put him in a romantic comedy with someone actually funny. Low risk, high reward. Monetize the thirst, don't fight it. And let's not forget the deadweight. Arthur Pembroke, an esteemed character actor who hasn't had a hit since dial-up internet. He's costing us a fortune in legacy contracts and is about as relevant as a VHS tape. We need to negotiate a graceful exit, maybe a consultant role, before he becomes a full-blown financial aneurysm. Catherine listened, mesmerized. He wasn't just complaining. He was performing a real-time, brutal, and shockingly accurate triage of a multi-million-dollar asset. He was creating a roadmap. Ethan, his assessment reached the conclusion, and his mind was ready to churn out the solution. The roadmap is simple. Year 1, phase out the deadwood. Rebrand the fading stars. The real goldmine isn't the big names. It's the second-tier talent. That comedian, Maya Lin? Undervalued. That young actor, Kevin something? Hungry. Shift resources there. But none of this matters as long as Norman Lark is playing puppet master. His thoughts turned sharp and disdainful. Ethan moved from assessment to corporate politics in a seamless transition. Norman Lark, the senior VP we installed as acting CEO of Starfire. What a joke. The man's only notable acquisition since he got there is a new hair plugs. He's not managing the talent. He's enjoying the perks. I saw his Instagram. 3 posts this week alone, cozying up to Jessica Sterling and Chase Rider at some exclusive club. He's not looking at their contract performance. He's looking at their assets. He's turning our new media division into his personal dating pool. He's a liability with a company credit card, bleeding our finances dry to fund his midlife crisis. Catherine's grip on the Starfire file tightened imperceptibly. Norman Lark was a political appointment, a necessary evil to placate a faction of the old board. She had tolerated his incompetence, but she hadn't seen the Instagram posts. The image of him using her company, her acquisition, as his personal playground sent a cold fury through her veins. Ethan's internal monologue concluded just as the elevator reached the lobby. Ethan concluded his assessment after going through the whole thing. So, step 1, fire Norman Lark. Step 2, implement the Ethan Hayes Talent Revitalization Plan. Step 3, profit. It's not rocket science. It's just basic competence, which apparently is in shorter supply than a sincere smile in this building. The doors opened onto the bustling main lobby. Catherine stepped out without a word, her heels clicking a decisive rhythm on the marble floor. Ethan scurried after her, his mind already shifting back to wondering if the cafeteria was serving those stuffed pretzels today. But Catherine's mind was racing. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick, direct message to Sarah. Catherine asked Sarah in a measured tone, Schedule an emergency audit of all Starfire executive expenses, starting with Norman Lark. And give me the full social media activity report for Lark for the last quarter. She put her phone away, a cold, purposeful calm settling over her. The elevator ride had been more productive than any board meeting. She had just received a comprehensive, one-year business strategy and identified a critical leak in her organization, all for the price of a silent elevator descent. She glanced at Ethan, who was now squinting at the cafeteria menu board across the lobby. The doors opened onto the bustling main lobby. Catherine stepped out without a word, her heels clicking a decisive rhythm on the marble floor. Ethan scurried after her, his mind already shifting gears. But Catherine's mind was a storm. The precision of his analysis, the depth of his insight, it was unnatural. The cold, strategic part of her brain, the part that had survived corporate wars, went on high alert. Outwardly, Catherine was still calm and in-control CEO, while her raging mind was going haywire. Who is he? Really? This isn't just luck or a gut feeling. That was a masterclass in corporate strategy delivered by a man who looks like he styles his hair with a ceiling fan. Is he a plant? A corporate spy meticulously embedded in my company by Harrison Vance? It would be the perfect play. Get the idiot no one would suspect close to me, feed him just enough real intel to build credibility, and then have him dismantle us from the inside. The paranoia was a cold knot in her stomach. It was the only explanation that made logical sense. And then she heard his follow-up thought, clear as a bell in the silent theater of her mind. Ethan, thinking monologue now, took a somber tone, as if he was going to make a momentous decision that's going to impact his future. Okay, crisis over. Now for the real dilemma of the day. Cheesecake or cronut? The cheesecake is rich, decadent, a classic choice. But the cronut, that's a journey, a flaky, sugary adventure. But what if it's too sweet? Ugh, this is tougher than the Starfire acquisition strategy. Maybe I should get both? No, that's a slippery slope to financial irresponsibility. Must be strong. Catherine stopped walking so abruptly a junior analyst nearly collided with her. She didn't notice. Catherine was still stuck on Ethan's life-altering decision of choosing between cheesecake or cronut. Pastry-based existential crisis? Would a corporate spy, with the fate of a multi-billion-dollar company in his hands, a man who just deconstructed our entire media division with terrifying accuracy, be genuinely agonizing over the merits of fried dough versus curd cheese? The sheer glorious absurdity of it was like a pin to a balloon, popping her paranoia in an instant. She almost laughed aloud. There was only one explanation. It was the most illogical, infuriating, and undeniable truth. Ethan Hayes was not a spy. He was not a mastermind. He was a genuinely, spectacularly lazy, surprisingly well-informed, internally sarcastic savant. A genius whose brain was a bizarre, high-performance engine that only turned on when it wasn't busy obsessing over baked goods. Catherine didn't know how to classify him, but she knew one thing for sure. She had to keep this man by her side. His internal monologue was a living, breathing, bullshit detector of unparalleled accuracy. As for all the other garbage rattling around in his head, the romantic fantasies, the critiques of her wardrobe, the profound thoughts on vending machine chip quality, Catherine's lips twitched into the faintest ghost of a smirk. Catherine consoled herself. Fine. If this is my new reality, I'll just have to treat it as a free, highly irritating, and occasionally brilliant comedy podcast, with commercials for cheesecake. She resumed walking, the cold fury replaced by a sense of grim, amused resignation. The game had most certainly begun, and her star player was a man who might very well sell company secrets for a well-timed cronut. A few hours later, Ethan Hayes stood in the center of his new office, and for a full minute, he just breathed. The air up here was different. It didn't smell like stale coffee and existential dread. It smelled of lemon-scented polish, money, and the faint, clean aroma of pure, unadulterated power. His corner office was adjacent to Catherine's, a fact that sent a fresh jolt of terror and giddy excitement through him every time he thought about it. The carpet was a deep, Navy wool so plush his worn-out sneakers sank into it, muting all sound. The desk was a vast, polished slab of reclaimed oak, so empty and pristine it felt like a crime to put anything on it. And then there was the tech. A sleek, top-of-the-line laptop sat closed on the desk, its specs capable of probably launching a small satellite. A massive, curved monitor stood beside it. Ethan's inner voice was dripping gold, his pupils turning into dollar signs. Well, well, well. Look who's joined the ruling class. This isn't a computer. It's a technological deity. Down on the 5th floor, we had machines that whined like a tortured cat, just opening Excel. This thing could probably simulate the entire global economy while rendering a Pixar movie in the background. And the printer is that a color laser jet that doesn't have an out-of-order sign permanently taped to it? What sorcery is this? He wandered over to the piece de resistance, a discreet door he'd initially mistaken for a closet. He opened it to reveal a private, fully stocked pantry. It wasn't just a pantry. It was a 5-star micro-hotel minibar. There was a gleaming espresso machine, a fridge stocked with artisanal sodas and chilled glass bottles of water, shelves of gourmet potato chips, imported chocolates, and a basket of fresh fruit that looked too perfect to be real. Ethan, behold, the nectar of the gods. And by gods, I mean the people who've forgotten what a W-2 form looks like. Downstairs, the vending machine charges $3 for a granola bar that has the texture and flavor of compressed sawdust. Up here, they have gluten-free, vegan, kale-infused crisps that probably cost more per ounce than my health insurance deductible. The hypocrisy is so thick you could spread it on a cracker. He grabbed a can of sparkling water that cost more than his old lunch and collapsed into his absurdly comfortable ergonomic chair. He spun around once, taking in the panoramic view of the city, the silent, powerful tech, the obscene pantry. Ethan's internal debate between top and bottom raged on. Let me get this straight. The grunts in accounting, who are actually keeping the lights on, are crammed into cubicles, fighting over the one functioning stapler, and surviving on cafeteria food that tastes like it was cooked by someone who's only ever read a description of food. They're working on legacy systems that were old when dial-up was cool, actually making the things this company sells. He took a sip of the fancy water. It was delicious. He felt a pang of guilt, which was quickly smothered by the plush embrace of his chair. Ethan thought disdainfully. And the top brass? The visionaries? What do? They sit in rooms like this, on carpets that could double as a mattress, and they make PowerPoints. They read reports other people wrote. They move numbers from one spreadsheet to another and call it strategic restructuring. And for this profound contribution to society, they get machines that can bend space-time and a private stash of organic, fair trade, single-origin coffee beans. It's a glorified, air-conditioned pyramid scheme, and Ethan Hayes, have just been promoted to middle management scam artist. And you know what? The scamming feels pretty good. He kicked his feet up on the pristine oak desk, leaving a faint scuff mark from his sneaker. He didn't wipe it off. It felt like a small, rebellious act against the oppressive perfection. Opening the laptop, he was greeted by a lightning-fast boot-up sequence. His first official act as special assistant to the CEO was not to check his email or review the quarterly reports. He opened a private browser window, navigated to Reddit, and began scrolling through memes, the silent, high-speed fan of the machine, the only sound in his palace of hypocrisy. He was a capitalist cog now, but he was a cog with a fully stocked pantry and a killer view. The cognitive dissonance was he decided a small price to pay. From the sanctity of her own office, separated by a wall and a one-way glass panel she occasionally used for discreet observation, Catherine Pierce listened. Ethan's internal monologue, a blend of scathing critique and hedonistic delight, washed over her. At first, it was just more of his chaotic background noise. But then, the core of his rant, the stark, undeniable truth at the heart of it, struck her with the force of a physical blow. The grunts in accounting, who were actually keeping the lights on, fighting over the one functioning stapler, surviving on cafeteria food that tastes like it was cooked by someone who's only ever read a description of food, working on legacy systems that were old when dial-up was cool. The words echoed in her mind, each one a tiny, sharp pinprick of shame. She looked down at her own desk, the flawless glass surface, the latest model laptop, the silent, high-speed printer in the corner. She looked at the Patek Philippe on her wrist. She was the visionary, the strategist, the one who looked at the stars. But Ethan was right. She had completely forgotten what it felt like to stand on the ground. A memory, sharp and unwelcome, surfaced. The year after her father's death. Solstice Group was bleeding money, hemorrhaging talent. Harrison Vance was circling like a shark. She was 22, not a CEO in a corner office, but a grieving daughter working 20-hour days in a cramped, windowless room. Her computer had frozen constantly, erasing hours of work. The coffee was a bitter, burnt sludge that was her only sustenance. She remembered the sheer, grinding frustration of fighting against the very tools that were supposed to help her save her father's legacy. She remembered the bone-deep exhaustion, the feeling of being utterly alone, propping up a collapsing empire with sheer will and cheap, terrible coffee. She had been one of them, and in her relentless climb to the top, she had forgotten what it was like. The shame was a hot, uncomfortable flush on her neck. Ethan Hayes, in his first hour as a capitalist cog, had seen the rot at the foundation of her empire more clearly than she had in years. The self-recrimination lasted for precisely 30 seconds. Then, it was funneled into action. Shame was an unproductive emotion. Solutions were not. She pressed the intercom button on her desk, her voice crisp and clear, all traces of her internal turmoil locked away. "Catherine, Sarah, my office." Now, a moment later, her secretary entered, tablet in hand. "Cancel my 11 a.m. and clear my afternoon. I want an impromptu meeting in the main conference room in 30 minutes. Mandatory attendance for the IT director, the head of infrastructure management, and the facilities director." Sarah replied dutifully, "Of course, Ms. Pierce. May I inquire as to the subject?" "Catherine, the subject is the operational backbone of this company." She paused, her gaze drifting towards the wall that separated her from Ethan. "It seems I've been reviewing the financials from 42 floors up for too long. It's time we took a good, hard look at the foundation." 30 minutes later, the executives sat around the conference table, their postures tense. An unscheduled meeting with Catherine Pierce rarely heralded good news. She didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table, her hands resting lightly on the back of her chair. Catherine's voice was low and sort of terror-inducing. A simple question. If I were to walk down to the 5th floor right now and ask a junior accountant to pull a report from Q2 of last year, what are the odds their system would crash before it finished loading? The IT director, a man named Robert, paled. "Ms. Pierce, our legacy systems, while dated, are, Catherine, are a liability." She cut him off, her voice like ice. "I am not interested in excuses. I am interested in solutions. You have 1 week to present me with a comprehensive 3-year plan for a complete technological infrastructure overhaul. I want every outdated terminal, every sluggish server, and every malfunctioning printer replaced. Budget is not a primary constraint. Efficiency and reliability are." She turned to the facilities director. "In the cafeteria, the menu is an embarrassment. I want a proposal for a new, nutritionally sound, and actually edible menu by the end of the week. Furthermore, I want free breakfast snacks and evening coffee stations implemented across all employee floors by next Monday. And any employee on night shift receives a free hot meal. No exceptions." The room was utterly silent, stunned. This company's most valuable asset is not its stock price. It is the people who show up every day to do the work. It is time we started investing in them with the same vigor we invest in our stock portfolio. That is all. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and left the room, the click of her heels the only sound in the stunned silence she left behind. Back in her office, she didn't look at the city skyline. She looked at the internal memo Sarah had already drafted about the new initiatives. It was a start, a small, long overdue correction. In his office next door, Ethan was blissfully unaware of the earthquake he had just triggered. He was now mentally ranking the artisanal sodas in his pantry. The blood orange is a solid 8-10, but the yuzu clementine, that's the real dark horse contender. A bold, citrusy masterpiece. Ah, the burdens of executive decision-making. Catherine listened, and for the first time, the sound of his frivolity didn't grate on her. It was the static that came with the signal. And the signal, today, had been worth more than he could possibly imagine. Extra scene. Sarah's calculation. Sarah closed the conference room door behind her, the stunned silence of the three directors still buzzing in the air. Her fingers flew across her tablet, already scheduling the follow-up meetings and drafting the urgent memos Catherine's directives would require. Her mind, however, was racing faster than her typing. In her 5 years as Catherine Pierce's right hand, she had learned to read the subtle gradients of her boss's decisiveness. There was the cold, calculated dismantling of a rival, methodical and predictable. There was the impatient sweep of a departmental cleanup, swift but targeted. But this, today, was different. This had been a surgical strike of unprecedented scope. First, the command to gather every digital breadcrumb on Norman Lark, a move born not of strategy, but of something that felt startlingly like personal vendetta. And now this? A complete infrastructure overhaul and a culinary revolution, announced with the force of a royal decree. It wasn't just business. It was a fundamental recalibration of the company's soul, triggered in the span of an hour. What changed? The question was a persistent hum in Sarah's mind. Catherine hadn't attended any new focus groups. There'd been no damning internal report. The only new variable, the only anomaly introduced into the meticulously controlled experiment of the 42nd floor, had arrived just this morning. Her gaze drifted down the hall, toward the polished oak door of the new corner office. Ethan Hayes. The man was an enigma wrapped in a slightly too casual blazer. She hadn't even seen Catherine speak to him directly today. Yet, the timeline was undeniable. He arrives. He sits in his new office. And within the hour, Catherine Pierce, who usually moved with the glacial precision of a chess master, was suddenly moving like a focused sniper, firing at problems she hadn't acknowledged for years. Sarah's lips pursed in a thoughtful line. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. But she knew, with the unshakable certainty of someone who managed the impossible daily, that the seismic shift in her boss's priorities was somehow, inextricably, connected to the unassuming man now sitting behind that door. She made a mental note to ensure the IT department prioritized the specs for his internet connection. Instinct told her that whatever strange magic was at work, it was an asset worth protecting. The next morning, a wave of confusion and then delirious joy swept through the Solstice group. It began with a company-wide email from facilities announcing the immediate rollout of free breakfast pastries, upgraded evening coffee stations, and a complete cafeteria menu overhaul focused on quality and nutrition. Minutes later, an IT bulletin followed, outlining an ambitious 3-year plan to replace every legacy system and finally euthanize the demon-possessed printers on the 5th floor. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the unofficial company subreddit, our Solstice Group Confidential, exploded. Reddit, Solstice Group Confessional. Posted by user, Cubicle Wizard OIS. This a drill. My department just got the notifications. Free breakfast snacks? Actual edible food? Are we being punked? User, Data Drono confirmed. The coffee machine on 7 now has a caramel macchiato button. I saw it with my own eyes. I think I wept a little. User, Gossip Giraffe. Oh, but the IT upgrade. She's replacing the systems. The glacially slow systems. The ones we've been complaining about for years. What is happening? Who did this? User, Anonymous Dog. A water cooler prophet. Sources confirm this came directly from the top. A unilateral decree from Her Majesty yesterday afternoon. But the question remains. Why? User, Throwaway Tissue. Oh, I was in the meeting. It was breathtaking. She didn't ask. She told. It was the most beautiful, terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. User, Gossip Giraffe. Oh so. What's her new nickname? The Benevolent Dictator? Her Generous Majesty? We can't keep calling her the Ice Queen after this. That's a queen who actually remembers her peasants exist. User, anonymous dog. Oh, the consensus in the East Wing is the dragon with a heart of gold. Still a dragon. Still breathes fire. But apparently, she's decided we're worth keeping in her horde. The new nickname spread through the building faster than the rumor of a downsizing. The dragon with a heart of gold. It was respectful, still fearsome, but now with a thread of bewildered affection. In the cubicles of the 5th floor, teams were practically hugging, weeping tears of joy at the prospect of not having to reboot their computers 3 times a day. At his new, pristine desk, Ethan's phone buzzed incessantly. The most persistent was a string of messages from Leo. Leo, dude. What did you do? Leo, the dragon with a heart of gold? Did you slip her a love potion mixed with a philanthropy textbook? Leo, seriously, Hayes. The free snacks alone are a bigger miracle than you getting that job. Spill the beans. How did you, on your first day, convince our resident Smog to squander even a single coin from her Scrooge McDuck money bin on the likes of us? Ethan stared at his phone, then at the artisanal sparkling water on his desk. He hadn't said a word to Catherine. He just sat in his office, mentally roasting the capitalists and feeling guilty about the fancy soda. A theory, the only one that made any sense to his completely uninformed mind, clicked into place. Ethan, typing back to Leo, "Nah, man, I didn't do anything. She must have seen me yesterday. The $20 shirt, the $30 shoes from the clearance rack. Probably caught me drooling over the fancy soda in the pantry like a kid in a candy store." He took a sip of the yuzu clementine sparkling water, the sophisticated citrus flavor a stark contrast to his own reasoning. Ethan, typing, "I think it just hit her that the entire lower floors are filled with hundreds of versions of me. A little depressing, honestly. So she just waved her hand and spent some corporate pocket change to make the peasants happy. Think of it as a guilt tax write-off. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth." He sent the message, completely satisfied with his analysis. It was the only logical explanation. The idea that the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar empire was secretly tuned into his every sarcastic thought was, of course, too ridiculous to even consider. The first week of Ethan's new role was a masterclass in how the 1% lived, and he was a star pupil. The decadence was immediate and profoundly addictive. His coasting philosophy, once practiced in a cramped cubicle, had been upgraded to an art form performed on a plush, executive-grade canvas. His main duties were bafflingly simple. He mastered the schedule of Catherine's coffee, a single, perfectly timed delivery of Jamaican Blue Mountain Brew that he took smug pride in. He drove her black Rolls-Royce to the dealer for service, reveling in the envious stares. His most complex task was delivering extravagant, personalized gifts to other titans of industry on Catherine's behalf, a role that essentially made him a highly paid, well-dressed errand boy. He spent the rest of his time exploring the limits of his new laptop's processing power and his pantry's inventory. The work was negligible, the perks were astronomical, and the cognitive dissonance was soothed by the sheer comfort of it all. He was, as he mentally put it, a parasite, but a very, very comfortable one. A week into this blissful routine, the intercom on his desk buzzed, shattering his peace. It was Sarah. "Ethan, Miss Pierce would like to see you in her office." Immediately, a flicker of panic was quickly suppressed. Probably just wants more coffee, he thought, grabbing the freshly brewed mug and heading next door. He entered to find Catherine standing by her glass wall, while Sarah sat with a tablet, looking tense. They were discussing Norman Lark. "Sarah, the expense reports are damning, but he's still protected by the Clayton Investors Group. A direct termination could cause a backlash.